sweet it is to be loved by you nerds. What is up? It's me, your buddy pal HeyArcher. Welcome back to HeyArcher Live here on Nerd Affiliated. I am wearing what I wore for the movie, just for you guys. Just for you guys. But you're here for your, but this is also a commentary for you. This is the show's about the movie. Yeah, so you guys are here for your weekly Thursday night nerdy show where we sit back and relax. I said we sit back and relax. And hopefully by now you poured yourself just a little bit of and we talk about Ghostbusters. We talk about Ghostbusters this week. It's been a couple weeks in a row, but we're talking about Ghostbusters this week because the movie just dropped. Spoiler free, and how appropriate. I put the call out there. The call was answered. 2 people were ready to go on this show before we even started. They're ready to go. They're locked and loaded. Their proton packs are loaded. Camera's not focused on me once again. Not sure why. Come on, camera. You can do this. You can do this. Nope. Hang on. We got this. Amateur hour, I tell you. If you've got a YouTube channel, podcast, blog, vlog, OnlyFans, newsletter, smoke signals, whatever it may be, put it in the chat. Support one another. Plug your shits. Like I said, talking Ghostbusters, spoiler free. Actually, there is a review currently sitting in the queue. So when this show is done, I will hit publish. That will also be spoiler free and then spoiler. Same video. Maybe I'll split it up at some point. But for now, it'll be same video. But we'll keep it spoiler free and talk about whatever it is you guys want to talk about. It's not just my show. Without further ado, we'll bring in the men, the myths, the legends. I don't have the button here anymore, so I got to do it manually. We have Yukon Phil and Lenny from For Those with Good Taste in the house. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Doing well, good, buddy. How you doing?
Yeah, I was waiting for that. I was waiting to see who went first.
yeah. I think we both were like, hey, how do we avoid talking over each other?
We'll go in the order on my screen. I'll let Phil go first.
What's up, man? Dude, I haven't answered the call lately, so I felt like tonight I had to answer the call. I knew it was a premiere, so man, I had to jump on and see what you got to say about it. So good to be on the show, buddy.
I appreciate that. And Lenny, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I normally Thursday is my movie night, so I don't always get to stop by, but I caught an early showing today, and I'll tell you, the only person wearing your outfit in my theater today was about 6 years old. So
there you go.
He also had good fashion sense.
That's what I'm saying. Somebody's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. So you got to see Ghostbusters as well. So we'll talk about that. And you guys had a good conversation going backstage about movies in general. So I think that will play into our discussion, of course. But I'll say hi to everybody in the chat before we proceed. Because there's so many windows on the screen, I won't have the chat visible. So I'll try my best to show it on the screen there. But we have Mark in the house. Good to see you. Been a while. Millennium Workshop in the house. Good to see you. EC Collecting in the house. Also excited for the movie. Has his cosplay good to go. Not sure if he's wearing it to the premiere, but we'll see. We got Patrick in the house. Good to see you. And we have KO in the house. Good to see you. You both have been here before. I feel like I don't have to do real proper introductions because you guys are also normally in the chat with everybody else. So we could skip that part. And I'm going to start with Phil on this one here. History of Ghostbusters. Has this been a thing you've always been into, or you're a newer fan, or just casually dip in the water every so often?
Been into it ever since the real Ghostbusters cartoon came out. Mm-hmm. And then I think I was 5 years old when I saw the movie, and I've seen that movie over 100 times. Loved it. Let me pan down here a little bit. There we go. That didn't work. Loved the movie, saw it several times, and then I remember Ghostbusters 2. I was in love with that movie. Who knows why? But that was a big one. And then I
Yeah.
got to be the dumb, like, oh my god, Ghostbusters 2 sucks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, always been a hardcore fan for the last, what is this, 40 years? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just been part of a staple when it comes to not only movies but collecting. My son's into it big time. He just got a Ghostbuster for Easter. So yeah, it's just part of life, man. Part of life.
I love that.
Lifelong fan.
Yeah, I love that. I was actually just watching Ghostbusters 2, so that's actually gonna be part of my review. Again, it's spoiler free, but I will mention that for sure. And Senor Lenny, what do you got?
I would consider myself much more casual. Like I was just saying before we hopped on here, I remember when I was a kid and in like enjoying it. And I think you have a greater level of appreciation if you were able to carry that fandom from when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like it's not something that, and maybe it's also because you got that terrible like reboot in what, like the early 2010s or something.
2016.
Was it 2016? Yeah. So
Mhm.
like, I don't know if like because that came back when I was a little closer to an adult and did so poorly, I never hopped back on the bandwagon. And honestly, before seeing this, I had been meaning to like take the time to watch them, and I just never committed to doing it. And then today, like yesterday, I watched like Tell Me About Ghostbusters Afterlife, so I actually had some idea what I was getting into today. And I don't know if I got enough. I knew who Podcast was. It's like this all makes sense to me now.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Hobbies with Jose in the house. Good to see you. So I fall in the middle because I didn't grow up on Ghostbusters. It was something I only got into last year from doing a cosplay with Anthony. I'd seen the movie maybe 2 times, but definitely once. And I was like, all right, it's cool. And then didn't see part 2. And then when Anthony said he wanted to make the cosplay, I was like, all right, I have a proton pack I bought on super clearance one time. So I'll go in the storage unit, get it out, start working on this cosplay. And I was like, I might as well like study up on Ghostbusters because people are going to come to you, test you. Oh, what do you think about this? Blah, blah, blah. So I was like, let me watch the movies again. Watch them, watch the new one, and was hooked. And I think it was just a combination of things. It was like building the pack, looking at videos online about how to do it, watching the movies at the same time, trying to memorize things. So if people ask you stuff in Comic-Con, that I just like hooked me. And I was like, all right, I'm all in. But with this movie, this was my first Ghostbusters in theaters experience. So I was pretty excited for that. I think I told Lenny on his stream the other day, 10 out of 10 excited for this one. So
Can I ask you a quick question? Like,
Yeah.
so with do you think at Comic-Con like is gatekeeping of fandom, and like I think across the board it's like an issue at this point, but do you think
Mhm.
it's like like very heavy there?
it's heavy if you're a girl dressed up as a character.
Yeah,
Like
okay. Yeah.
I had never cosplayed as Ghostbusters, so I didn't know what to expect from that fandom. I know in Star Wars, it can be hit or miss if you cosplay a Star Wars character. I've seen girls all the time get
Sorry.
I'm forgetting her
Sorry.
name.
Bailey.
Bailey.
Yeah.
I've seen like girls be like, oh, like they'll walk around and somebody's like, hey, I love your Sailor Moon costume. What was your favorite episode of like season 3 of Sailor Moon? What do you think about it? So I've seen that before. So I was kind of like, I don't know what's gonna happen. So I might as well like watch them, know them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like it's hard to be like a fan of something. I feel like, or become a new fan of something that has an established lore at this point, because
Yeah.
you're always going to have somebody who knows more. I mean, you definitely know it, Steve, from like MMA fandom, dude. Like, it's impossible to break into a bubble these days, especially with social media. It's like you're not a big enough fan. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, for sure. No, but even
Well, and I've seen fights break out like in Star Wars conventions where
exactly.
what's the name of this blaster? And he gets it wrong, and they're literally ready to go blows with each other because they don't get it straight,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
it's like you're saying, you don't really know what to expect when you're going to do a cosplay at a convention and that sort of thing, because there are people that take it really serious and they're like ready to fight you if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's like, I mean, that's concerning to me.
And I was going to reference Star Wars. Star Wars was going to be my example of like, I've seen that one where people get heated, where it's like, oh, you're a fake fan, or oh, your sequel trilogy, like I'm gonna beat you up. Which maybe I've been part of that crowd. I can't confirm or deny those allegations, but Star Wars fans can get pretty nasty. So that's where, I wasn't sure, so I was like, oh, I'll just research, just see.
Well, I was talking about this with like on my show with The Walking Dead, even like, and I think it's much the same at this point to Star Wars in some ways, where it's like to hop on and be in a like to try and be a fan now if you weren't a fan if Star Wars 40 years ago. And now, like, even with The Walking Dead, it's like you have to go through 11 seasons of one show, 7 seasons of another show. Here's another spinoff that's 2 seasons, then you have another 3 spinoffs on top of that. It's like, how can you expect anybody to even want to get through all that to become a fan? But then on top of that, if the fan base is telling you like you're not going to know enough to even be accepted in here, it's like, well, why would I ever put the effort into that? And
I mean, I'm guilty online till this day. I don't like going people's comments anymore to like complain about stuff, but mentally, I'm like, if I'm watching, and maybe you both feel this way about a certain franchise or sport or whatever, but like, for my example will be Star Wars. Like, I've watched Star Wars videos where somebody will be like, oh, I've never watched like the Clone Wars, but they're talking Star Wars content on a regular basis. And I'm like, I feel like that's like required. Like, and everybody's level could be different, and for your reference of MMA and the UFC, like, if people didn't watch Ultimate Fighter season 3, I'm like, all right, I'm sure you're a fan, because I know you're going to say you watched 1, and you're probably going to say you watched UFC 1, but like, did you watch any other seasons of the show? Like, were you there when, John Jones chased down a guy in Jersey to then fight Shogun the next day? Like that, stuff like that. So I wasn't sure where it would go.
Yeah, you can't steal valor. You can't pretend to be something that you're not, right? Like, and I think that's a tough thing. If you're coming on a show every week and like posing as if you're like some expert on something when you have large gaps in your understanding, that's totally different, like, than being like, hey, like, I'm interested in this and I'm getting into it and I want to talk about the stuff that I'm seeing, and I'm not going to pretend like I know things that I don't. Like that, that's different to me. But you definitely can't steal valor and be like, I know everything about this and pretend, and that's definitely an issue. You should get gate kept for that.
I love the stolen valor thing on that.
Well, I think it really depends too when you grew up. So like for me, it's always going to be original trilogy, right? So I can claim that I know a lot about the original trilogy, which for Star Wars, which I do, but I'm not going to be as well versed as like Tony and Star Wars Sith on prequels, because that was a little bit past. I didn't get as much into that. So I think it's really find your lane, stay in your lane. If you're more of a prequel guy, stay in the prequels. If you're more of a sequel trilogy guy, which I don't think there's any of those, stay in your lane there, But claiming to be like a full Star Wars knowledge guy, that's really difficult, especially with like all the shows now. I mean, if you know that and your mind's that great where you can point out each stain on every single show and every single movie, well, I mean, you must spend your entire life in front of the TV, because that's tough. I mean,
I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there's a cosplay group called the 501st, and it's their Star Wars group. Lenny, that's a group in Star Wars as well. There's a troop called the 501st. So it's real life group. Yeah. They call themselves the 501st, and they're known for a lot of like charity stuff. Like, you go to Comic-Con and you see like a super dope Star Wars like setup, it's probably them. Like they got props, they got sets, all sorts of stuff. But if you want to be in the 501st, whatever cosplay you deem you're worthy enough to wear has to be like legit. Like, you actually have to apply, and then they have to look at your cosplay. Like, you have to tell them where you sourced everything, and then they go essentially gladiator, like, which way is it going to go? And that right there, I was like, okay, one, I never want to be involved with it. I don't care how many good things they do. But two, because of watching videos online of people building proton packs and being like, oh, I'm going for this accuracy or this accuracy. I was like, oh my God, is Ghostbusters going to be like that too? Where people are like, oh, bullshit. Nope. No, like the entire time walking around. I wasn't sure.
Well, and I've actually known people that were in the 501st and they left because it was so ridiculous. They literally send you instructions on everything that you need to have, and it's got to be handmade. You can't go buy like a Black Series helmet and try to pull that off. Nuh-uh. You got to like hand make it. It's got to be official, and it's got to be as close to movie accurate as humanly possible. And like you said, Steve, if it's not, they'll throw your ass out. Yeah. And then you got to really commit to a lot of the charity events and a lot of the things they do too. Otherwise, I mean, you're flying across the country, you're going to Canada, you're doing all these things, parades. And if you're not willing, you're out. So, I mean, you really got to be invested, and it's a lot of money to get invested into the 501st. They do good work, but I mean, that's too much. It's not fun at that point. It seems like a job to me.
That you pay to be at.
I was literally going to ask this, like, because it sounds almost militant to a point, like bed inspections, like for your corners being sharp, you know, like, and they're not, this isn't a job to them.
No.
Like, this is a hobby.
I'm sure some of them at the top might get paid, but I like most of them, it's a hobby.
That's a lot. I actually respect the level of dedication that it would take to like be into that at that level, but I don't know if I could, like, that's almost too much to me.
Yeah. No, definitely. For sure. And what up, Legacy of Nerd? Good to see ya. And the man collects as well. So let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about the movie that we saw. And I will lead off with expectations going in, just to lay the field here. The trailer came out. I think we all saw the trailers, or one of them at least, where it's going to be the more like darker, edgier type of movie, potentially. But I think ultimately it's still Ghostbusters at the end of the day. So went in there. IGN gave it a 4. I saw that like yesterday before I went to bed, and was like, all right, don't let that affect your decision. Don't let it affect your decision. So upon going into the movie and watching the movie, I would say it teeters the line of like trying to be horror, but then family comedy type stuff. I don't think anything's too crazy in it. But Lenny, do you think the movie merited a 4 out of 10? Or is it decent in any way, shape, or form? That face kind of already spoils the answer.
For me, it probably teeters 5 out of 10. It was better than they gave it, but I do think you missed the caveat that they gave Madame Web a 5.
True. Yeah, you did say that. You did say that. Yeah.
Like in realistically, has IGN been like a trustworthy source in quite some time for anything? So I don't put much into it, stock into that. As far as expectations, I couldn't. I've owned Afterlife for a while. Not only is it just like on streaming, I own that movie and I've never watched it all the way through. So I think it was something I struggled to get on with like the newer stuff anyways. But I did, to your point, I thought the trailer looked interesting. And to the point where the trailer, before you know it's Ghostbusters, you're like, oh, what is this, like another Day After Tomorrow or something? Like, what do I have going on here, So I was intrigued by it. And yeah, you say horror, like I don't think I necessarily got much horror out of it per se. I definitely think it's, if you're a fan of it, and or I think it's, to your point, it's made for kids, and there was a lot of kids in the theater that I was in. I don't know about your showing, but there was a decent turnout for kids, and they seemed to enjoy it. I actually got shushed by a kid because I had said something to my friend who was seeing it with me. I've never had that happen to me before, dude. Like, that was crazy. Like out loud shushed me.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm not talking that loud. I'm sorry. Like, really, my bad. I didn't know that's the type of movie I was in.
Yeah. Phil, did you let your kids watch Afterlife?
No. My kids can't handle that. They can't handle anything Ghostbusters right now. I think if I was going to start them on one, I'd start them on Ghostbusters 2. It seems a lot more tame than the others. Yeah. It's more of a kid movie. Let's be
Yeah.
honest. That's kind
Yeah.
of when real Ghostbusters was out. They were marketing
Yeah.
more towards kids. So if I was going to start them on something, I'd start them on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I definitely agree. So I'll give my number up front before I go into this discussion, but coming out of that movie, I gave it out of 10, I gave it a 7. I didn't go as low as a 5 or a 4, but I gave it a 7. And then after coming home and watching Ghostbusters 2, because I was like, all right, let me see if I missed anything, but also I feel like this movie's trying to be that in tone and how story advances. I could see where they were coming from, but I also didn't want that in this movie. I felt like I didn't want Afterlife. I didn't want this to be part 2 the way Afterlife was part 1. And while it doesn't do that completely, I feel like it does borrow a bit from it. Phil, when you saw Afterlife, did that bother you that it was almost a retread, but like a continuation of part 1?
Yeah, it did bother me, and it was so slow to get going. I remember sitting there watching it with my wife, and I'm like, 45 minutes in, I'm like, when is this going to get going? It was so slow, and there just wasn't a lot of. I mean, I appreciate the backstory,
Yeah.
and I appreciate everything that they tried to do with Spangler and with all that stuff, but it just. I mean, I nearly fell asleep in the first 45 minutes, to be honest with you, because it just wasn't fast enough and enough fast paced enough. We remember the original Ghostbusters in the library.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you were hooked in the first 10 minutes, and you were scared shitless in the first 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it had none of that for me. And I'm like, this isn't Ghostbusters. It's like what Steve, you and I have talked about this. It's just not the same. It's not what we grew up with. It's not what we're used to. And so it requires a much bigger attention span now than it used to, because you don't get that hook to bring you in and keep you enthralled through the whole movie to find out what's going to happen. Now you're like looking at your watch for 45 minutes. So no, I wasn't happy with it.
Yeah. I could see that. Lenny, you were gonna say something?
How'd you feel about the pacing of this one, Steve? With that being said.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because before we went live, you guys were talking about runtime, and this movie has a short runtime. It was hour and a half? 45. Yeah,
it's like 145. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I thought I thought the pace was good, but not relative to. This is gonna sound so stupid. I apologize. It didn't. The pace felt good relative to a Ghostbusters movie, not to a movie. So, like I was saying, I came home, I watched Ghostbusters 2, and I was like, all right, like I see where he was like studying this to make this movie, as far as like shit happens where you're like, hey, we should really like follow up on that, and they're just like on to the next joke, like doing something else. Like Ghostbusters 2, they they go into the ground and they see there's a river of slime under there. So mentally you're like, oh, we should really look into this. But yet they don't go back to the slime stuff until like 30 minutes later, because they're doing other wacky things, like, hey, we're back, like all that stuff. So that's where I'm like, all right, they kind of do that in this movie. But what I did feel was rushed was the end of the movie. I thought that the third act was just like pedal to the metal, and I was like, whoa, slow down.
Well, I think that's where some of my negativity for the movie lies, and maybe this is where being a casual hurts me a bit more, in that I don't have that appreciation for the pacing of the originals to tie in to the experience here. But I felt like the first hour and 15 was a lot like we were talking about the Afterlife movie being, where I'm like, man, like, can we progress some stuff here a little bit? Like, can we kind of get moving? And then, all of a sudden, like, you're just in the third act, and there's a lot happening, and like, it's just, you kind of blow through it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that can work when you've enjoyed the first hour and 15, and then you're like, holy shit, like that last 20, 30 minutes was like the payoff to all of it, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that I enjoyed the first hour and 15 enough to then have that payoff.
You literally reminded me of Dune 2. Like Dune 2, the final battle part, we won't spoil anything, but the final part was so late in the movie. I actually looked at my watch and I was like, I just want to make sure I still have time for the battle to even happen, because we've been watching all this other stuff. And the final act is like maybe 20 minutes, if 15 even could be. Like it just goes. So this one tries to do that. It doesn't execute it as well.
Well, speaking of Dune, like I thought Dune 1, a movie that I was really hesitant to get into, and I didn't watch it till the day before I saw Dune 2,
Yeah.
and being blown away because I was so enthralled with like the world building that they did for the first like 2 acts of that movie, and then it pays off with great action for a majority of the third act, I felt like. And yeah, like it is a lot different experience, especially when you have extended runtimes to be enjoying the dialogue and the build up of the story to get those payoffs. I think you do appreciate it more, but it has to be executed.
Yeah. Something I haven't
So
seen.
I got a question for you guys, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the run times of movies and how it's so long nowadays. You guys are saying this is a little shorter. Do you guys think it would have benefited from a longer run time, since it took so long to get going, and we could have added more in the third act to make it a little bit better and kind of be satisfied with what we saw?
I'll let Lenny go first.
I think it depends on what you're getting more of. I think there was characters in this movie that were standouts to me, and if you were going to be getting more of some of them, even to a point more of like the legacy part of it, I think then I would say yes. But there's storylines that don't really do a ton for me here that I think it's like at its core, it just depends what you're going to flesh out. And if you make the right decisions, then probably yes. But I don't know that I always trust that more run times means you're going to make the right decisions on where you dedicate that time to,
Yeah. I 1,000% agree. And I'll keep saying not a spoiler in case anybody comes in new. There are scenes in the trailers that were not here. And I only noticed that in editing my review for tonight that I'll publish later. Where I was like, oh, wait, I didn't get that. Oh, they didn't show that. Oh, they didn't explain where that came from. There's a lot of that. And if that's what was cut out, then give me a longer movie for sure. But to Lenny's point, there are a couple plot threads that if you extract them from the movie, I feel like the movie continues. Like it doesn't mean anything. You know what? Actually, I hate that I'm going to say this out loud, and I'm glad that Carlos is not here right now. But it gave me an Eternals type of vibe where you've got way too many characters in a movie, and there's no way you can dedicate the time. You just can't do it. And especially with a shorter runtime, it's impossible.
I found myself with Finn Wolfhard like being like, what is he really doing in this movie?
Yes.
Like he's a person who's pretty well established at this point because of Stranger Things and It, right? Like he's had himself attached to 2 pretty big properties. He's done other movies outside of that, maybe not to the same level of fame or popularity, but those 2 characters alone, or those 2 properties alone, did a ton of business. And then I watched this and I'm like, he's like barely featured through a lot of this, like why is he, and maybe in Afterlife he's more of a pivotal role in it? No. Okay. Like, so then what are we really doing with him?
That was a complaint I had. I thought that they would remedy that here, and it didn't happen. It's too many people, and maybe this is this could have been a chance where, I asked on the Ghostbusters Reddit page, I was like, hey, it's weird that Phoebe Spangler is not like the main part of like the posters, because I feel like she's the main character going into this movie, and everybody was like, no, like she's not. Like the family is going to be the the main character. Like, it's everybody. It's not just her. And I was like, all right, because Afterlife, she's pretty major in Afterlife. So going into this one, I was like, well, maybe other people will get a chance to like have their shine. If maybe I missed it in watching Afterlife and like, oh, it's really not supposed to be about her. But then this movie comes out and I'm like, it's kind of about her, but they give her less shine, not to have somebody else shine, but to be like, hey, this person's going to say something. Hey, that person's going to say something. Hey, this person's going to do a cool thing. Maybe, like it's too much. It's too much.
The Eternals tie in here. I think the person who stole the most of this movie is Kumail Nanjiani.
He did. He's in it a lot.
And I think he was a bright spot in the film. I don't know how you felt about it, but I thought for the humor and everything, I think he was probably one of the strongest players in the movie for me.
Yeah. I won't say what my complaint. I had a couple complaints about him. I won't say what those are because those could spoil parts of the movie. But what I will say is I think his role should have been a teenager. I think the way he acted, his backstory, how he ties into the story, I was like, that could have been freaking Finn Wolfhard's character. Like he could have, did whatever, and then they're like, oh, time again. I'm trying to be careful, but I feel like while he was good, he also visually looked like he just jumped out of a different movie. Like, I don't know, he was like so colorful in his clothes and his hair, and everybody else was more like normal looking. Maybe it's the fly suits, but he felt out of place for me.
Well, New York's a diverse place, Steve,
Not in Friends. Not in Seinfeld.
I mean, like, how are they going to recast it? Like, what's the kid from Life of Pi doing these days? I have no idea,
I'm glad you said that, though, because my biggest I keep saying that phrase. Top 5 complaints of the movie was something I was afraid of, which was New York City. I thought that the city would look terrible because it was all filmed in London. And they did some B-roll. Yeah, they did some B-roll stuff in New York. Like some of the chase scenes with the car, like the car was in New York for that. But when they're in the car, like they're in London. But New York City is like not full of people in this movie. It's very bizarre. There's a moment where Phoebe goes into Washington Square Park and it's empty. And I'm like, it could be 2 a.m. and you at least see an army of rats walking across that thing. Like it just, New York City, I feel like is very pivotal to Ghostbusters 1 and 2. And I feel like it's almost like its own character in both those movies. And here I feel like New York City is a green screen. Not visually.
Is New York City in the other movies this forgiving as well?
All right. Slight spoiler here. It won't ruin the movie for you. Once again, it's like people forget the previous Ghostbusters things happen. Then they do stuff, save the day, and everybody's like, oh, it's the Ghostbusters. And it's like, motherfucker, they've been here the whole time. And there's these historical documents called television and VHS, DVD, internet, newspapers. There's all these cool things that like people still question shit in this movie. I'm like, to me, that was one of the Ghostbusters 2 things that pissed me off. I'm like, you all were there 5 years ago when that building blew up and they literally saved the day and there was a giant marshmallow in the street. Like, why do you question them? But I was like, whatever, it's a rushed sequel. But then in this movie, they do the same thing. And I'm like, bro, like, we gotta get past this. Like, it's established. They've saved the day like 50 million times. Why do people still question them and still like, oh, I gotta put them in jail. Oh, I gotta do all, like, I'm like, come on, bro. It's annoying.
Did any of them ever go through like the Tony Stark like storyline where they're like, you took out a whole building in Russia? Like, at any point, any of them ever felt bad for any of like the bad things they've done by just like releasing ghosts upon New York City and destroying buildings?
That could have
any of them had a PTSD?
Unfortunately, no.
It could have been this movie. That would have been a good plot,
like
actually.
that's what I'm like. That's the arc
That's a
I
good
need.
story.
Is like
Yeah.
somebody having some feeling a little bad, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Like they killed people. You know, that would be
Yeah.
cool.
I think that's
Yeah, if we
one thing that
did,
annoys me the most is not understanding the reference material, not understanding. Go back to Ghostbusters 1, do your research, go back to Ghostbusters 2. Having to re-explain where characters came from the very beginning in each movie is so annoying. It's like, we know that,
Yeah.
the public should know who the Ghostbusters are. They should know how many times they bailed New York City out. They should know all this stuff. You shouldn't. It should be so ingrained within the city of New York who the Ghostbusters are. You shouldn't have to YouTube the friggin' thing. You should know.
Yeah.
That's how important they were and stuff. So that's one thing that really bugged me about Afterlife is there was a big chunk of that movie that was tied to, well, who are the Ghostbusters? Well, shit,
Yeah.
we know who the Ghostbusters are. You don't
Yeah.
need to do that for us.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to defend that for a second. I only just thought of it. I literally just thought of it. I could see kids not knowing stuff because I've had kids work for me. I call kid anybody under 21. And I'll like the other day, I was like, yo, what's this? Hey, what's this song from? And my employee was like, I have no idea. And I was like, bro, it's Eye of the Tiger. Have you not seen Rocky? And he was like, what's that? And I was like, holy shit. So I could believe kids. I could believe kids. But adults, I'm like, that's a different tale. But I think the ultimate frustration I have is after leaving the theater, first of all, I did enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed the movie because I was just like, give me more Ghostbuster stuff. Like, at this point, I'm pot committed. But I don't think the movie pushes the franchise forward with casual fans. Like people like me have to see that movie 30 times, I think, because a casual person's not going to go see it. And then lies the question, as we were talking about backstage, is it worth loading up the family car, going down, paying for all the tickets, paying for all the concessions, taking the time out of your day? Is it worth all of that? I'm leaning no. But I want you guys to see it so I can get another one.
When is spring vacation for kids or whatever? Is it April vacation?
Yeah, up here at least in Mass.
My kids are on it right now.
Oh, they're on it now?
Because that's the one saving grace I think that you always have for these types of movies, is like if parents are always looking for stuff for kids to do on a random Tuesday or Wednesday during spring vacation week, just to be like chill out and be quiet for a couple of hours. And I think that's where you get staying power. You were joking with me the other day about Kung Fu Panda, but that's why those types of movies last in the movie theater a lot longer than your run-of-the-mill action movie now, is because kids, you're always going to look for something for kids to do. And what I was trying to look up, and I don't know if either one of you guys know this, like, what was the budget on the new Ghostbusters?
I'm going to guess
movie?
150.
Just because their expectation is like 40 million. And after seeing the movie today, Steve, like, do you think that this movie makes that much money
this weekend?
Yeah.
It's tough. Actually, I'm gonna get you the budgets for the last ones, and we'll see here. So actually, hang on. Let's look at it together. We'll do a little nerdy coffee box office stuff here. So I'm just gonna go over franchise it by Ghostbusters.
I have the budget for Frozen Empire in front.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah.
Okay, so look at that. Last one was 75. So me saying 150 might be crazy high, but what do you got?
I have Frozen Empire at approximately 75 as well.
Oh, great. Okay.
And that's from Screen Rant, so like relatively, reputable.
Yeah. So once again, they're just trying to equal out the last one. So last one opened up at 44, and then as a reminder here, I wanted 60 mil, but I predict 40. But 40 would be a real fight. I don't think 40 is easy.
That's the box office expectation from what I was reading, though, in general, is about 40 million. And I just like, if the last movie made that much, I don't see how you have the same. You generally would go down. I don't think you would maintain with this one. You'd go down a little bit, if anything.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
I was looking to see if the dailies came out, but they don't even have Wednesday up. So yeah. I think it's tough. It's tough. I feel like this is what I want to happen, actually. So Legacy here says, really, I think the movie gets you a TV show, whether it's a drama or a kid show. I actually, in my review, I say it's time for them to leave big screen for a second. Like TV show, whether it's with these actors or some other thing. Ernie Hudson said in interviews that Ghostbusters should leave New York. Like it's New York every time. And even in the trailer, this isn't a spoiler, like Garaka's trying to go get all the ghosts out of the containment unit. And I'm like, that was the plot of part 2 or sorry, the end of part 1, the containment unit broke. Like, we're going to do that again. Like, containment unit broke again. Like, let's somewhere else, Ghostbusters, Chicago, Ghostbusters, LA. Like, it's time. Like, it needs a refresh at this point, not just another, movie. Because the next movie coming out, I'm like, what are you going to do? Copy 2016? Like, I liked 2016, but you can't just keep copying the same stuff over and over again.
I think I do think the idea is good of like moving it out of New York, because it is weird, because like, why haven't you, to a point, because like ghosts don't really give a shit about like your city, dude. Like, I feel like they would probably just be cool with going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, give me Ghostbusters International. Like, he went across the water, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, always wanted to see London. Just went and checked it out real quick.
Yeah.
You could definitely do something there. And as far as a TV show, I think it would be tough to. Like, I don't think you're pulling Paul Rudd for a 10-episode TV show necessarily. But so maybe recasting it and doing a spinoff of a different city in a TV show, or going animated. I do think this is a perfect show for animation, and like to make a comeback there. And I haven't watched it yet, but maybe with like the success of X-Men 97 or something like that, you get more of these older properties getting moved to an animated digital.
Yeah. Actually, I'll ask a question for Phil, since he's an OG member, or fan. Would you be cool, and I asked this in the Reddit group and everybody like roasted me for it, would you be cool if there was more supernatural, like magic stuff, like werewolves and vampires type of stuff, like traditional horror outside of ghosts? Would you be cool with that, or you don't think there's a place for that?
No, I think that would be good, because like the real Ghostbusters, they brought some of the Universal monsters into the mix, like in the toy line. So I think that would actually be cool. And you would bring in some of those really classic fans of that genre. It's kind of like what the Motu Ninja Turtle crossover is doing with those figures. You're kind of bringing everybody from both spots. So, there's a lot of people who love Universal monsters. I mean, Colin's one of them. I like Universal monsters. So you bring something like that into the mix, I think that would be a good thing, and just find a way. The biggest thing is find a way to do it right. Do justice to the reference points that you have. Do justice to the Universal monsters. Do justice to the Ghostbusters, and then kind of intertwine it. Even if you had to do that show-wise or animated-wise, I think if it's done right, it could work, and you could really broaden the audience. But I'd be all for that.
I was even thinking like those, like that. What is it? There's like Chicago PD show. There's like Chicago Med, Chicago Fire, like or NCIS. Like, there's different ones, different places, crossover from time to time, something like that. And there's some magic.
I mean, Ghostbusters Compton to be interesting.
I love that. I would love that.
Finally found out what happened to Tupac.
Yeah. Just ask him. Yeah, we'll just go ask him.
Yeah. You'd have them in the streams, and then the Biggie ghost to come and screw everything up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Diddy keeps trying to stop them. Diddy's like the villain of that. He's like, you can't find out what happened. That'd be so good. I mean, but that's why, like, on my Proton Pack for last year's Comic-Con, I put on like a cross, like a crucifix on there, and I put on a from Full Metal Alchemist. I put on like an alchemy watch because I'm like, I feel like there should be more supernatural things, not just ghosts. Because even in Ghostbusters, there's different kinds of ghosts, like people who actually died, or just full on like manifestation of just like hatred. Boom, a random thing is created, you know? So that is a thing. Yeah, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah. You can even have ghosts on the team.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it, like, my only fear is, like, at what point does it teeter into, like, Scooby-Doo world? If you start branching out into all these other directions. And, like, that was when you first brought it up, especially if it was animated, I'm like, well, that just sounds a lot like we're teetering into Scooby-Doo realm if we do this, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the original cartoon, not original cartoon, I guess that was the original cartoon. The real Ghostbusters, like, it was wacky at times. There was like more scary things as far as a kid's eye goes on it, but I think you could teeter the line properly. You know, this movie, I thought teeter the line of like, how young can a kid be to see this? Like, there's a couple parts where I'm like, all right, maybe you got to be like 12. Like, I can't bring a 7-year-old into this. Like, but you know, debatable on the family. But I think on a cartoon, you could kind of kiddie it up. It doesn't have to be like a Justice League necessarily or anything like that. If you want, because I feel like at the end of the day, Ghostbusters has always been on the wackier side. So
I think if you do animated, it does breathe a little bit more life into like those legacy characters being able to be more involved too.
True.
You know, like just being able to do it from the comfort of your home, cash a paycheck, and like they you know, they can kind of like bring some youth.
I feel
to
like
those
half the
characters.
cast cashed the paycheck on this one.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. This was Bill Murray just being like, I'm gonna be Bill Murray for a couple minutes here and make some money.
People in the reviews were, and this was the thing, I was kind of happy in a way I did not go to the premiere because I didn't want my opinion affected by it. And I was listening to some reviews from people who did go to the premiere, like invited. And I was like, I feel like you're trying to not piss them off. Like, some of the highlights you're talking about aren't really highlights. Like, calm it down. If you have to buy that ticket, would you feel the same way? You know? Now, I'm hoping I get invited to stuff. I always want to get invited to stuff. But I feel like if you're reviewing things online, you have to, you can't be biased because you got a free ticket. And some of the reviews I've seen, I'm like, you're definitely being biased here.
But I don't know if it's the free ticket that brings the bias to that. I do think there's something to, it's like a good comedy movie, right? Like a good comedy movie is enhanced by the crowd that you're there with enjoying the movie, and like you're going to be way more heavily influenced. So the parts that, like, if you're in a half full theater, you're not going to have the same impact on that experience that you would if you're in a completely full theater of people who are there, and maybe they're hamming it up a little bit because they were given a ticket. I don't know. But like, I think that you might find parts more enjoyable because you kind of fed off the energy around you a bit more than you would have if you were just watching it individually on your own.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I was in a theater with the stars, like some people were last week, maybe I would have felt different, you know, but I don't know. I feel like if you are like reviewing it truthfully, like this isn't like the greatest movie. This is a passable movie, passable at best.
You gave it a 7 out of 10. I'm just, again,
a
little above average now.
I think, yeah. You know what? As a Ghostbusters fan, I'm giving it a 7. As a non-fan, probably still give it a 7, honestly.
Okay, I thought we were gonna get the truth here for a second.
Well, I almost said 6, but I'm thinking about like 6. Like, so lately I've been doing 3 out of 5s on Instagram. So this one I think is a 3 out of 5, 3.5 out of 5. It's middle of the pack. Like it's just like the movie comes out, you see it, we're good to go. I don't got to see it again. Like I feel like that's how it applies to most people. I'll watch it again just because I obligations of liking the franchise. But I think for most people, if they did see it, they'd be like, "Oh, that was interesting," and then go on from there.
What do you guys think is like the perfect scale for rating a movie? Because I've been using Letterboxd, right? And like I've been
Hmm.
talking about this, that I find that the 5-star thing is a bit limiting in some regards to being accurate. Like you just I saw 39 movies in the theater last year. I tracked them all, right? And I end up with a bunch of movies that are
Yeah,
all ranked
yeah,
between 2 and 2.5 stars, and it's very hard to diversify your your feelings on those movies to give people an accurate depiction, because it's like they all just kind of end up being in that pocket. And you're going to have some outliers that are in the 4-star range. You're going to have some stuff that, to your point, is maybe 3 stars or 3.5 stars, and you're going to have that stuff that, like, expendables that you just truly hate with a burning passion, and you give half a star to. But like, I don't know, if do you guys think there's a perfect, is it the 100 point scale is the better way to define your rankings,
I'll let Phil go.
I always go, so everything I do, toy reviews, movie reviews, whatever it is, I always go out of 10. 10 kind of gives me a broader range. So where, we're in that 5, 6, 7, it's passable, it's good, it's average. We get in the 8s, 9s, and 10s, then okay, that's exceptional. Anything below that is complete garbage. So I think you limit yourself when you only go out of 5, because there's a fine line between good and bad, and good and exceptional. So I always use out of 10, and then, you know, I use a lot of halves as well. The 8.5, obviously we're getting up into something really good. So that scale for me seems to work the best.
Yeah, the only reason I stuck with 5 is out of 10, I felt like I was, or even out of 100, I felt like I never was dropping under the 5 or 50. Like I felt like that was like a wasted space. So I think the only way it makes sense in my head to do 5 is if I don't rank the movies against each other. Where I, at the end of the year, like when you mentioned that, Lenny, when you were like talking as your show was going, and you're like, all right, I now have 20 movies here that are 3-star, and I don't agree that all of them are the same. Like that's where I'm like, okay, if you're trying to rank them like that, 5 is not enough. You do need more space in there. But I think I try to, like, in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make them like their own things. Like it's not gonna be used to see which is the better movie of the year or anything like that. It's more of just like, is it worth your time?
Yeah, I thought the one benefit it gave me was it allowed me to be a little bit more fluid with my judgment on stuff. So I was able to move things throughout the year and be like, all right, well, if I like, maybe this was a little bit below the 2.5 I gave it, because I do feel like strongly that this one was better, but it's not as good as something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to JB's point here, like that, I do think the 100 scale may be where I want to go to in the future, just because you know, there is a difference between an 83 and an 87, and it's not a huge
Mm-hmm.
number difference, but like from a grading scale, it just gives you a little bit more specificity on like what you can do. And I'm generally pretty forgiving with movies, but there are things that I hate that I have no problem with giving less than a 52. The
Yeah,
movie 65
I knew you were
will
gonna say
forever be like
that.
forever be like a 23 for me, dude. Like,
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that. I knew you
yeah.
would say that.
There's two movies that I like, and I just, with a passion, the past year have hated, and it's Expendables 4 and 65. So
Did you see the Ridley Scott one with Adam Driver and Matt Damon, Ben Affleck? Um, oh God.
I know what you're talking about, but no, I didn't see it. No.
Yeah, my friend, he was like, "This is the worst thing that's ever existed." I'm gonna look it
Dude,
up.
I mean, you have Ridley Scott. Like, do you think, speaking of him, because his box office has been terrible for quite
Mm-hmm.
some time now, what's the expectations for Gladiator 2?
The Last Duel is what I was talking about. I don't. It's one of those like, why? My issue now is, and we're all on the same page. Like, enough with the reboots, right? But like, I don't feel like even the reboots are making enough money to justify doing a reboot. Like, I feel like we're like, everybody, including Hollywood, should know that this is not the way. Not to make not an intentional Star Wars thing, but Gladiator 2, I'm like, you're just going to use this as a way to reboot it. And if it does well, you're going to give us more of them. But like, who needs another Gladiator movie? Just do a different Gladiator movie and call it something else. Like, this isn't going to make people be like, oh shit, I got to go see this now. Like, that's not what's going to happen here. But actually,
Yeah,
oh, good.
I was just like, I can't disagree with that at all. Like, I don't really. There was not a period in the past 20 years that I think anybody was like, I really wonder what's going on in the world of Gladiator.
Yeah.
That I need to get back in here, and especially if we're going full new character allotment, it's like we're just basically going to get the same movie.
Yeah.
Is the vibe I would have. And it was really disheartening doing a preview for this whole year and looking at the amount of retreads and reboots that we're getting now in general, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell,
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, the Beetlejuice 2 trailer dropped today, right?
I was going to mention that.
Same thing. It's like, how many people I could just tell how much Michael Keaton's aged and how much the character is going to age, even though he's dead. And in that, and it's just, I mean, that is a 37-year-old movie now, right? So it's like, how much of that audience has stuck around and waited and been wanting that movie? And it's like, well, most of them have moved on from it. You know, they're not really super into it. And now the problem with it is you can just see the age, and the whole movie's based on a guy that's dead, but you got a guy who's almost dead himself playing him. So it's, I don't know. I think it's going to be hokey. I think it's going to be corny. And again, you know, to your point, I think it's going to be more of a reboot than a sequel.
Well, what's her face is in it, and that's why they're like, oh,
Kenny Ortega.
Exactly. They're like, oh, she was rebooted in Addams Family, so she's gonna reboot this one too. Like,
she rebooted Scream as well.
I was gonna say Scream,
right.
But now she's out of Scream.
Yeah. Yep, she is. R.I.P. And you'd think they would take a hint because I for the most part enjoyed the most recent Indiana Jones, but that didn't blow anybody away with its performance. I think it lost money, you know, like, and if a legacy property like that with Harrison Ford isn't making money, I just find it hard to believe that there's going to be a ton of stuff that you can bring back from, like, and that was around far more recently. And didn't have the performance that you're getting out of this. So I don't know that there's like people clamoring for this stuff anymore. I think we're to a point that like people want original content again. And it's just finding these ideas out there to make stuff work, you know?
Yeah. Or even just take the shot. Like, I don't think anybody wants to take the shot and risk losing money, even though they're losing money movie after movie. I think back to, I was listening to Kevin Conroy, who voiced Batman. He did an interview where he was talking about how he got the role. He was in theater. The people making the movie, the Batman show, one of them was in the audience, saw him perform, was like, that's going to be my Batman. I just love his voice. Like, I think he'll be able to have the range to play Bruce Wayne and Batman. But Kevin Conroy was like, if the Batman animated series came out today, there's no way as a theater actor they're casting me. They're going after Chris Pratt. You know, like that's what's happening. You know, so not only do they not want to take chances on franchises, they won't even take chances on actors anymore. So it's just, you mentioned it on your show. We're getting another Dune, Ghostbusters, Bad Boys, Beetlejuice, like Gladiator in the same year, Twisters in the same year. Every single one is a remake or sequel.
Yeah, and I don't know what the remedy is for it. I do think it's maybe not original content, but there's still so many video games out there, and we're finally starting to see some good transition from video game to, whether it be small screen or big screen, that I think that's more where maybe some of the opportunities lie now, is to find good ways to transition. But instead we're getting like Minecraft,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
as the stories that they're going to take, rather than finally giving me the Metal Gear Solid movie that I've been clamoring for and begging for years since I was a kid. Like this
Yeah.
thing is made for a movie, and you're not doing it. But Minecraft is the direction we're going to take things. Like,
Well,
and
you
I
said
get
it
it. Like
earlier,
Super Mario did well,
kids with
but
Kung Fu Panda.
yeah, like Mario did well. So now that's what we're gonna get because some guys in a boardroom were like, "Wow, that made $1 billion. Like we need to find the next property that's going to do that. That's made for kids."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I
Funny.
got to run, guys. Thanks for having me on, but I
Yeah.
got to run. So,
Yukon
you guys
Phil,
have a good
See you
everybody.
one.
later, man. You too.
Thanks, man. See you guys.
You saying Mario, I was just thinking, God, what is that? It's called Secret Galaxy now. It was called Toy Galaxy before, where they do a history of, and they were doing history of the Super Mario Brothers movie, the OG movie.
Okay,
And they went down like actors that were supposed to play Mario. And one of them was Tom Hanks. We could have got
that's insane.
Tom Hanks across from John Leguizamo in Super Mario Brothers.
Dude, speaking of this, and I don't know if you like, I talked about this on my show last week. So the Ricky Stenicki, the Cena movie that just came out on Amazon.
Only knew it because you brought it up. Otherwise,
Did you hear me talk about the casting that they had for that movie?
oh yeah, because is that the one that you were saying like it was supposed to come out in like 2000, like
2010.
There you go. Yeah,
It was originally made in 2010 for James Franco.
yeah.
It's in development for a few years. He doesn't do it. It moves on to Jim Carrey. From there, it gets attached to Joaquin Phoenix. And there's one other person it gets attached to that I can't remember right now. And then it gets to John Cena.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how
Zac
crazy is
Efron,
that?
did you say that already?
It wasn't. Efron was always attached to it. Like,
Oh,
well,
okay.
not always. It didn't get made until it got attached to Efron.
Okay.
Basically,
Mhm.
like it was in production hell for the better part of like 8 or 9 years, essentially, until Efron got attached, and then they decided to go with Cena. But the actual character had been like out there for a while. But like thinking about the fact that like Jim Carrey and Joaquin Phoenix were attached to something that couldn't get made is kind of crazy. And then the fact that John Cena ends up playing a role that Joaquin Phoenix would have played, it makes no sense, man.
Yeah,
Those
that's the
things
world
don't
we're
add
in.
up. Yeah.
That's the world we're in. And to everybody's comments about Beetlejuice, I don't know if we were like questioning necessarily if it would be a awesome movie or not. I think it's just like an unnecessary movie, but I'm willing to say it won't be like a smash hit if the budget for that is 200 or so. Like it shouldn't be that.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be anywhere near that. But if they somehow were like, we're so committed to this, we're gonna go all out and pay for all, like Winona Ryder, Michael Keaton, and Ortega. Like if they somehow get that budget up there north of 100, I think it's gonna be tough to make money on that thing.
Yeah, and like there's plenty of movies that bombed that people liked, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it a success. I would also ask, what was the last thing Tim Burton did? And maybe I'm incorrect, but I just can't think of him hitting on a movie in quite some time that people were like, wow, like he built his name in the 90s, in the 80s, I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
not any time in the past 15 to 20 years.
Yeah. I need to really make a director's section of my like tracking just to see like who has a shitty record or not. I'll go back over
Because
here
I think he's definitely a guy who we put on a certain pedestal
for old stuff.
and it's because he has a unique vision, but I think that unique vision at some point hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
And took away from his success just as much as he built it upon it, because he never evolved past it. That's why the guys like Nolan and stuff have maintained where they're at, Spielberg, for as long as they have, because they're able to reinvent and do all these different types of movies, whereas if you get pigeonholed into something, it's kind of tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So looking here at the last, shall scroll to there. Everything in red did not make any money, or it's in the hole. I was shocked by Hunger Games doing as well as it did, and movies like that. Movies like what was the one with Statham, Beekeeper. where I'm just like,
Fantastic.
yeah, where I'm like, wow. I'm like, all right, I guess people will go out there to a movie on random on a. This might be good. I have no idea what
My
drove this.
second favorite, my second favorite movie of the year, still as of
Peacekeeper.
right now. Yeah, I mean it's fantastic. It's very much John Wick. Don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
it's nice to see Statham like in that kind of role.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to show he might be a credible, box office draw at this point. So,
All right. So I'll ask a question. We're gonna publicly talk about this before we wrap it, and I think you know what I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna ask the
it,
audience: is Sydney Sweeney a box office draw?
I'm leaning towards yes right now. I think it's one thing to be like the buzz of social media. I certainly understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this. It was pretty important to see how Madam Web does because, if that bombs and then her next project doesn't do as well, I think she's in a tough spot. But from all reviews of Immaculate that came out this week, she's getting strong acting. Like her acting is getting pretty well praised for that movie. She had a large hit last year. I think she has a specific look that is, going to draw, largely a male demographic, obviously. But if she can keep women involved there too, she's already going to do well. And I don't know if you saw her comments about Spider-Man, but I thought they were pretty interesting about like for her, Spider-Man wasn't, or not Spider-Man, but Madam Web wasn't so much she wasn't as concerned with the performances of the movie, but more for the doors that it opened for her. Because now she has dialogue with the execs at Sony, and it gave her. She also mentioned like that's a large part of why Anyone But You got the platform that it got was taking that chance on that movie. And I think that she's shown that she's pretty smart and she's likable in her interviews, like Hot Ones and everything. So I don't think she's there yet, but I think she's on her way. I know you don't totally agree, and you've brought to my attention, and you're not wrong. Listen, like the rom com genre is for streaming now. Like the rom com
Yes.
genre is not for the theater. But I think that that's why it was so impressive what she was able to do with that movie, and in combination, Glenn Powell, who I was
Yeah.
also talking about him in that same way, where it's like he the new it guy as well, and I think largely it comes down to how does Twisters do this summer. But he's attached to a lot of big properties, man. Like,
How did his was it a World War II movie?
the Aviator. No,
Yeah, something like that.
it wasn't Aviator. It was Devotion.
Let's see, how did that one do?
Devotion was the name. I don't think that did well, but that was a couple years ago. Like that
But that
was
was after.
pre. Was that pre Top Gun or post?
No,
It's also weird that
post.
he did a movie like that after Top Gun or around Top Gun. You know.
All right, so here we go. Share the screen here. All right, so Top Gun 3's here, as it might come out. He was in Dark Knight. I don't even know what he was in there.
Yeah,
Um.
he gets his ass kicked by Bane.
Oh, okay.
I just watched it a week ago.
Um, Spy Kids 3. Do you know what he was in that?
He's one of the. I think that was like his first role. I think he's one of the, not the main kid, because that was Jacob from Twilight, right?
Something like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know. I get it.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I think you're thinking of Spy Kids 3D. No, you're thinking of Shark Boy and
That
Lava
is.
Girl, right?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe he's the main kid in Spy Kids.
No,
I don't
he's
know. I didn't
definitely
really watch that one.
not. Let's see. Cast.
No, he's
Uh,
pretty low on this totem pole, huh?
yeah, he's probably some background. Selena Gomez
But
is in
he's in
there.
there with the likes of Sly and
Long-fingered
Selena
boy.
Gomez. Oh my god, what a name!
Yeah.
Look at that cast, though, dude.
Yeah.
Clooney, Stallone, Elijah Wood. I saw Salma Hayek a little further down there.
Yep.
Wow. Bill Paxton, Danny
R.I.P.
Trejo. This is crazy.
Wow. I would.
They were just throwing everybody into that movie.
It was game over for that movie at a 4.4.
That's cashing a paycheck, dude.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, it beat Ghostbusters as far as the score goes, 45 versus a 44.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
So all right. We'll see. We'll see. Wait, is he the one that dies in Expendables 3? No.
That's Hemsworth, isn't it?
Helmsworth dies.
Yeah.
I love that movie. It's so bad.
Have you seen 4 yet, dude?
I still haven't, because you know what it is? This happened when you told me what happened in Jurassic World, where I was like, your explanation of whatever the last one was with the DNA splicing, your explanation of that movie was way more interesting to me than the actual movie. Like, I have no interest in seeing the movie. So Expendables 4, I actually talked about it at work as though I saw it, solely based on you breaking down the movie.
I don't know on my show in the couple of years that I've been putting out stuff that I've been more impassioned talking about something than I was talking about that movie. Like I was just like so fiery about my frustrations with that movie. And I still feel it every time I talk about that movie. I feel the fire burning inside of me again, because I'm like, it's such, it's a travesty what they did to it, man. Like, it's just bad. It's really bad.
I forgot 50 Cent was in that movie.
Too much. Yeah. Yeah. So isn't Megan Fox.
Look at this cast, man. I remember us like, talking about movie theater experience. Jackie Chan's in this? Oh no, this is like related.
Yeah, I don't think he's in that one, no.
What is, I don't know. Anyway. Talking about like the movie theater experience. I remember when Expendables 2 came out, I want to say. That was one where we were all like, this is back, I was living in New York at the time. And we're like, all right, we're going to go like load up a flask. We're going to go to the bar first and then go watch Expendables 2. Like, it was just like, that's the movie. Like, I miss that.
Dude, and for action junkies, like, that is peak cinema, dude. Like, Expendables 1 and 2 is just like the R rating. And just people getting torn to shreds with like machine guns, machetes. Didn't matter what it was. Like the guns felt like they were rockets. It was incredible.
Stallone running down a dock. It's great. It's a comedy movie without him even realizing he's giving it to us.
And that's the best Stallone. Outside of Creed, that is peak Stallone, is when he isn't in on the joke.
Oh man, I am the law. That was another one too at work. Somebody said something and I was like, I knew you'd say that. I was like, I bet you don't even know what movie that's from. I'll just tell you, Judge Dredd. And he was like, what's Judge Dredd? Like,
yeah. And he didn't even know the Carl Urban one.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun. I'm glad you jumped on so we can lightly talk about this movie. That was tough to like not go all in on it.
Yeah, I have some takes. So
yeah. Will that be next week's show or this coming week's show?
Next week's show. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
We're gonna. I think we're gonna be starting to, because we're doing digital obviously more now. So we're gonna start recording a little bit more real time with stuff, because obviously it is tough putting out stuff a week after it's been out and we've seen it.
But yeah, in case anybody is not familiar, even though I said that they would be, but take a moment and, as the kids say, or hopefully they don't say this, but as I would say, plug yo shit.
On our platform, kids can say whatever they want. It's an open book. For those with good taste on YouTube, we're also anywhere audio podcasts can be found, at FTWGT on TikTok. And we're on Instagram and X as well, X videos. So check us out.
Yeah. I I'm a fan. Listen every week. And
number one fan.
There you go. I was shocked. I was shocked that you gave Dune a good review, because the episode when you're like, oh, I hadn't seen it yet. I was like, damn. I'm like, he's gonna watch Dune, be like, this sucks, and then he'll see Dune 2 because he has unlimited movie tickets. But I was like, damn, he's gonna hate this movie. He actually liked it.
Mind blown. Dude, I surprised myself because generally when I get myself into a spot where I'm like, I just don't want to watch it. I don't want to watch it. It's very hard for me to like change my mind on something. I was like, it's one of those 2 things I watched at home and just phone down, locked in, watched the whole thing, and then super excited. And I stand by the fact that I would go see a double feature of Dune 1 and Dune 2 and not have a problem sitting through 6 hours in the theater.
Yeah. On IMAX, I could probably be convinced to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on. Let's see. I may or may not have picked up Ghostbusters Ghost Traps from AMC and Regal Cinema. Comparison video uploading as we speak. Geek Strong, where is there a Regal here in Massachusetts? Because I was like looking, and there's like nothing around.
Is that the one in Hingham? Is that Patriot?
Patriot. That's Patriot.
Okay.
There's a Showcase.
Regal
is that
used
Regal?
to be. No, that's a Showcase now. It used to be a Regal in Hanover.
Hanover. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't think of one.
Oh, he went to Newington, New Hampshire.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. He's a North Shore kid.
If anybody's ever in Rhode Island, Apple Cinemas in Rhode Island,
Mm-hmm.
one of the best theater experiences I've had. Great.
There you go. There
Fill
you
your own popcorn buckets. It's great.
I'm down. And then last comment, Mark says, Judge Dredd, classic. Yeah. That's a fun one to watch the behind the scenes on. Because like Stallone was just like, F it. I'm just going to do what I want. Comic book? What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, nerds.
Yeah. I love Sylvester Stallone. But thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening and watching. Thank you, Yukon Phil, for jumping in earlier. Make sure you guys check out the replay for that conversation. Thank you, Lenny, For Those With Good Taste, for joining the show. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Well, would you say go see Frozen Empire or wait for Frozen Empire? Or not even watch it?
I would say, for me, my personal opinion, wait. But if you're a fan or you have kids, I think go see it. You know,
fair. I would agree with that, actually. HeyArcher Live every Thursday, 8:15ish p.m. here on Nerd Affiliated. But every Monday morning, 9 a.m.-ish, we have Nerdy Coffee. 2 different shows, 2 different vibes. Either way, you're stuck with this guy. Again, hit the like button, hit subscribe, join the channel memberships, and the Frozen Empire review will be dropping in about 5 minutes from the time you hear my voice. Like, comment, subscribe. We'll talk to all you nerds in the next video. Peace. We're out of here.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.